Chen Yen is a very studious girl. She always gets good grades and is among the top 10 in the school. Because of that, she doesn't have many friends. Also, things at home are not going well. Her mother owes a lot of money, that's why she's almost never at home. That's why Chen has to get good grades, because it's the only way she can change her situation. But one day at school, one of her supposed friends took her own life. When they see her lying there, everyone is horrified. But Chen covers her with her jacket. When the police start an investigation, they ask her if she knows why her friend made that fatal decision. Chen tells them that they weren't friends and that he has no idea why she did it. But Officer Yi tells her not to be afraid and to tell him everything she knows, but she prefers to remain silent. When she returns to class, someone had spilled juice on her chair, just like they did with her friend. Because of that, she realizes that now she's the next one. But her mother is traveling, and she doesn't have many friends. She doesn't know who to turn to. The teachers think it's just a simple prank and that it's nothing to worry about. The next day, the bullies approach her, and the leader of the group asks her to explain some topics, but Chen refuses and runs away. She knows that if she hangs out with them, things won't end well. On her way home, she's attacked by the bullies, and they threaten her not to say anything about her friend's death. When she gets home, her mother is waiting for her. More than her mother, she seemed like her daughter because Chen did everything. Her mother apologizes to her and asks her to hold on a little longer. Soon she'll have enough money to pay for her university. And when she passes the Gaokao, they'll go to Beijing to start a new life from scratch. The Gaokao is the most important exam in a student's life in China. Basically, their future depends on it. If they get good grades, they can be accepted into a good university. But if they get bad grades, their options become very limited and their life will be much harder. At night, while Chen is going back home, she sees some bullies beating up a boy. She wants to help him by calling the police, but one of the bullies notices her, and that's why they steal the little money she had. Then, since she wanted to save the boy, they force her to kiss him, thinking that she knew him. Seeing how they humiliate her, the boy gets up and violently hits the leader of the bullies. With that, he manages to get them to leave them alone. A few days later, Bei looks for Chen to return the money that his bullies stole from her. Also, they had offered him protection in exchange for money, but Chen tells him that he should rather protect himself. Later, the boy accompanies her home, and there he discovers that the bullies had printed and posted posters of her mother, saying that she is a scammer. The next day, they sent that poster to the whole school. Because of that, all her classmates make fun of her for being a thief, so she runs out of the school. Fortunately, Bei goes to pick her up. She, upset, asks him to take her anywhere. So the boy takes her to his house, and it turns out he literally lived under a bridge. When they arrive, he asks her what's wrong. She doesn't want to tell him the truth, so Bei asks her if she likes him, but Chen says no because she doesn't like boys without manners. Bei gets angry and tells her that boys like him don't need manners. The next day, during PE class, the bullies start bothering Chen, but she's fed up with everything and tries to defend herself. This only makes things worse, and when she goes down the stairs, they push her. Because of this, another one of her supposed friends asks her to endure a little longer. When they get to college, all of this will be over. Apparently, all three of them were bullied, but when they started picking on her friend, they left them alone. That's why, afraid of having the same fate, she decides to report them to the police, not only for her own case, but also for her friend's case. But the bullies, especially the leader, didn't seem to show the slightest bit of remorse. For them, it's just has she killed herself? A classmate was the least of her problems, but the leader's expression changes when they tell her that they will tell everything to her parents. So, they start an investigation at the school, but they can't get any solid evidence. That's why one of Officer Yi's superiors tells him not to take the case so seriously, because in the end, the Ministry of Education will handle it. Sometime later, what the officer said happened. The Ministry of Education took the case and simply suspended the girls. If they couldn't do anything, they simply beat up the bullies. But the parents of the group leader did have money and got her a better deal. They also managed to get the teacher removed. Because of that, Chen is afraid, because she feels that her complaint was useless when she leaves class. Officer Yi apologizes to her because the girl's parents have good connections, and they couldn't give her the punishment she deserves. At night, desperate, she calls her mother. She wanted her to come home to protect her, but she tells her that she's busy because her business went wrong and she has to hide for a while. For that reason, Chen has no choice but to endure and cry in silence. The next day, she had to pull herself together and focus on studying for the Gaokao. But when she got home, the bullies were there waiting. They wanted to get revenge for being reported, but luckily Chen managed to run and hide in a trash bin. One of the girls found out she was there but pretended not to notice and left her alone. But with the bullies nearby, she couldn't do that anymore. She decided to go to Bei's house. He was the only one who could help her. That's why she asked him to protect her until the exam date so she can get good grades. And from Hubei City, where he was found, he met a girl by the trash can, but he couldn't. Trash can Hubei, but then she left. She makes a deal with Bei. He agrees to help her, but in return, she will owe him one and must give him something he asks for. She agrees, and that's how their business relationship begins. The next day, Chen returns to school feeling calmer. He said he would take care of it. Besides, he had threatened all the bullies who were bothering her and told them they'd better not mess with her. With Chen, the girls were so scared that they didn't go near her again. So days went by more peacefully, at least for Chen, who was able to study and focus on the exam. But
El chico fueron más difíciles, ya que por cuidarla dejó de trabajar y
he did extra, more dangerous jobs where he always ended up getting hurt, but even so, they spent a lot of time together. And little by little, they became closer. Then one of the bully's friends went to ask Chen, who was protecting her, if he could protect her too because now the other bullies were picking on her. But Chen refuses to help her. Later, she goes to Bei's house and asks him if his wounds hurt. He answers that they do, but what hurt more were the beatings from his own mother. He tells us that when his father abandoned them, his mother took it out on him, beating him every day. That's why he couldn't take it anymore and ran away from home. Then he thanks her for asking, since no one had ever asked him if it hurt. By opening up to her, he starts to feel a strange emotion he had never felt before. That's why now he thinks maybe he can change his destiny. She also starts to smile more. She no longer has the fearful expression we saw at the beginning. That's why one day she suggests to Bei that they run away together. He asks her how they'll do it, but Chen doesn't have a plan. Still, she promises him that one day they'll be able to walk proudly under the sunlight. Sometime later, the boy and his friends are arrested. They had been accused of rape, but since they were innocent, they weren't afraid. They even mock the police officers. Meanwhile, Chen was alone at Bei's house, worried. She calls him, but he didn't have his phone. In the end, she goes back home, but the bullies were waiting for her. They take her to a dark alley and start beating her. Even the girl who had begged for her help hits her. But they didn't stop with just a simple beating. They cut her hair and stripped her. They also recorded everything. But what they didn't know was that a neighbor called the police, and there was also a surveillance camera nearby. That's when the leader of the bullies realizes she's lost. When Bei is released, he sees what they did to Chen. That's why, upset, he wants to go after all those bullies. But she stops him and tells him it's not worth it because the exam is very close. She wants to focus on the Gaokao as much as possible since it's her only chance to change her life. Bei was very furious, but he decides to listen to the girl he likes. Then he finishes cutting her hair, but in the end, he also cuts his own to show her that she's not alone. Sometime later, the Gaokao was very close, and by the end of the course, all the students seemed to be happy, but on the contrary, Chen just wanted everything to be over. The day of the exam is a big event. The teachers encourage the students to do their best, since their future depends on this test. Bei also went to support Chen, although she did so from the shadows, but at the same time, a body had been discovered. It turned out to be the leader of the bullies. The police managed to identify the car of one of Bei's friends right at the crime scene. It turns out that Bei had taken his car. All evidence points to him. But the girls claim Chen is the killer since only she had the opportunity. Would she have a motive? The same bullies show the video to the police. Officer Yi is outraged and asks Chen why she didn't call him. When all that happened, she answers that it didn't make sense because the same thing would happen as last time. That's why she preferred to focus on the evidence. Even so, Officer Yi says she's suspicious. When they interrogate her, she says she doesn't know anything. And since she's a minor, they have no choice but to let her go, especially because there were still 2 Gaokao exams left. The next day, she takes her second exam as usual, but when she leaves, Bei takes her by the hand and leads her through some alleys. He tells her to be strong, says he'll take all the blame, and urges her to stand by her decision no matter what. She replies that she won't leave him alone, but he asks her to accept it because it's the only way he found to give her a happy ending, since he has nothing else to offer her. In the end, he pretends that he tried to assault her, so the police will stop suspecting her. Chen doesn't want to let him go, but he tells her not to forget that he still cares for her. At the police station, they accuse him of being a serial rapist because he had left evidence to incriminate himself. But it was all false so that Chen would be declared innocent. In addition, they accused him of the girl's death, since there was Bei's DNA under her nails. Everyone thought this would close the case, but in reality, he wasn't the killer. Apparently, the girl went to see Chen to beg him not to report her for what she did to him, because if she received one more complaint, she wouldn't be able to take the Gaokao, and she had already failed a year. If she failed again, her father would kill her. With tears in her eyes, she begs him to have mercy on her. Chen agrees, with the only condition that he never sees her again. The girl agrees and thanks him, then wipes away her tears, and she tells him that they should go to different universities. That's why she asks him to transfer to another university, because she will also be going to Peking University. Chen simply ignores her, but the girl keeps belittling her. She tells her to accept her money so at least her mother will stop scamming people. When she hears this, Chen gets angry and ends up pushing the girl. She falls down the stairs and hits her head. That's why she went to Bei to tell him everything. Because of that, Bei helped her get rid of the body and planned everything to take the blame. But Officer Yi, who previously wanted to protect Chen, noticed something in her statement. When they interrogate her again, they discover even more inconsistencies. But since Chen was still a minor, they couldn't detain her. Besides, the boy kept saying that he did it, and that he had no accomplices. No matter how many psychological tricks Detective Yi used, Bei stood firm in his testimony. In the end, Officer Yi puts Chen in the same interrogation room to see if he's able to lie to his face. But she says again that she doesn't know anything and that she doesn't know Bei. He goes along with it, and that's how they confirm their stories. Everyone took it for granted that it was true, but Officer Yi knew that the boy wasn't the culprit. That's why he wanted to help him, because he was a juvenile delinquent and already had several prior offenses. If he was found guilty once again, he would spend at least 20 years in prison, unlike Chen, who could get a minimal sentence. Sometime later, Chen finished his exams and only had to wait for the results. Bei, on the other hand, was sent to the correctional facility, even though he would spend many years in prison. He didn't feel bad. He knew he did it so that at least one of them could keep their promise. That way, Chen could walk with his head held high under the sunlight. Although she was very sad, sometime later the test results were published and Chen got a good grade. All his hard work had paid off. With that grade, she would be accepted into Peking University. But then Officer Yi arrives to congratulate her for achieving what she wanted so much. He also tells her that she no longer has to worry about Bei because he was sentenced to death. Chen felt very happy, and I shouted at him to leave her alone to at least let one of them keep their promise. Officer Yi hugs her and tells her it's a lie. Bei was not sentenced to death, but since he has a criminal record, he will receive many years in prison. However, if she decides to confess, she will only receive a few years. In the end, when the gates of heaven were so close, Chen decides to do the right thing. That's why he goes to see Bei, and with a smile, he asks for forgiveness for not being able to keep his word. Yi doubted whether he had made the right decision, but his superior tells him it was the best for both of them, since they are both very young and he is sure they will be able to put their lives back on track. Many years later, we see that Chen became a teacher, and although many measures had been taken in the country to prevent bullying, there were still victims. But this time, Chen had the power to protect her students. Just like Bei did for her, in the end we see that Bei was also free and walking behind Chen. Both of them managed to keep their promise, even though it wasn't as they had planned. But at least they could both walk with their heads held high under the sunlight. And that's how this story ends. Remember that bullying is not a game. Victims have wounds that often take decades to heal. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any summaries. See you in the next story.